The mistaken message, "Hi, my beautiful family." Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today I bring you a powerful and heart-touching story about how one small mistake can turn into an unexpected turning point in life. It's a story of embarrassment, kindness, understanding, and the quiet growth of two souls who learned that sometimes fate uses the strangest ways to bring people together. So, sit back, relax, and let's begin this unforgettable journey. The golden afternoon light spilled into Emma Parker's small but cozy apartment, wrapping the living room in a soft, honey-colored glow. The city outside buzzed with the sound of life. Cars honking, distant laughter, and the rhythm of footsteps echoing along the streets below. Emma stood in front of her mirror, her heart beating with a mix of curiosity and excitement as she adjusted the straps of the new turquoise bikini she had impulsively ordered online during a midnight sale. It was brighter than what she usually wore, playful, confident, and for a moment she caught herself smiling. She wasn't someone who often bought things just for herself. Most of her income went toward bills, groceries, and saving for her dream, starting her own small marketing studio one day. But this time she had allowed herself a little moment of joy. Her best friend and roommate, Sophie, had convinced her that she deserved it. "You work harder than anyone I know," Sophie had said just 2 nights ago. "You deserve to feel beautiful. Buy the bikini and wear it on our beach trip next week." Emma had laughed, hesitant at first, but then the image of sun, waves, and laughter had won her over. Now, standing in front of the mirror, she wanted Sophie's honest opinion. She picked up her phone, turned slightly, and took a quick picture, sunlight glinting off her hair, her playful smile framed by confidence and warmth. It wasn't meant to be serious, just friendly, fun, something best friends would laugh over while planning which sunscreen to pack. She opened her messaging app, typed with a grin, "What do you think? Beach ready or should I return it?" Without thinking, she hit send, her thumb moving faster than her mind. She tossed the phone on the bed, humming softly as she looked through her wardrobe for a cover-up. The message whooshed into the digital void, and she didn't give it a second thought. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. Expecting Sophie's bubbly reaction, she reached for it casually. But the moment her eyes saw the name flashing on the screen, her smile vanished. It wasn't Sophie. It was Daniel Reed, her boss. Emma froze, her mind blank, her breath shallow. Her boss, the creative director, the man whose sharp ideas had guided Brightwave marketing to multiple national awards. The same man she had spent 2 years trying to impress with her work ethic, creativity, and professionalism. The same man who had never seen her in anything less than a tailored blazer or a neat dress, and now he had a picture of her in a turquoise bikini, smiling like she was on a tropical magazine cover. Her hand trembled as she tapped the screen. There it was, her message, her photo, and right below it his reply. "I think you have the wrong number, Emma, but yes, very beach ready. Enjoy your trip." For a moment she just stared. Her heart raced. Heat rushed to her face until she thought she might faint. "No, no, no," she whispered, sinking onto the edge of her bed. "Oh my God, what did I do?" She covered her face with her hands, her thoughts spiraling out of control. This couldn't be real. She had just sent a bikini photo to her boss. Her boss. Every scenario that came to mind was worse than the last. HR complaints, gossip, humiliation, maybe even losing her job. The sound of the apartment door clicking open made her jump. "Emma, I brought tacos." Sophie's cheerful voice filled the living room. "You better not have eaten without me." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Emma sitting there, pale and wide-eyed, clutching her phone like it was a live grenade. "Okay," Sophie said slowly, setting the food on the table. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," Emma croaked. "I sent a picture to Daniel." Sophie frowned. "Daniel who?" "Daniel Reed, my boss. My creative director." The words came out strangled. For a long moment, Sophie just blinked, then gasped. "Wait, you mean the Daniel? Mr. Never Says More Than Necessary, Mr. Iceberg Eyes, that Daniel?" Emma nodded miserably. "Yes, that Daniel. I meant to send it to you, and I sent it to him instead." Her voice cracked. "It was just supposed to be a silly picture for you. I asked if I was beach ready." "Sophie," he replied. "He saw it." Sophie pressed her lips together, clearly fighting back laughter. Okay. First of all, breathe. Second, what did he say?" Emma handed over the phone, face buried in her hands. Sophie read the message and raised her brows. "Wow, that's actually really decent of him. He's not mad, not weird, just like politely awkward. I've got to say that's kind of impressive." He said, "Very beach ready, Sophie." Emma groaned. "How am I supposed to ever face him again? He's going to think I'm completely unprofessional." "I'm going to die." Sophie squeezed her hand, her voice calm and warm. "No, you're not. Listen, accidents happen. Phones make mistakes all the time. You didn't do anything wrong. You just hit the wrong contact. That's it. You'll apologize professionally, keep your head up, and move on. Trust me, Daniel seems like the kind of person who won't make it weird." Emma stared at her friend's confident face and wanted to believe her. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, you're right." She picked up the phone again, her fingers trembling as she typed. "Mr. Reed, I'm terribly sorry for the inappropriate message. It was meant for my friend and sent to you by mistake. I deeply apologize for the unprofessional error. Thank you for your understanding." She hit send and waited, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. A moment later, his reply came. "No apology necessary, Emma. It happens. See you Monday." That was it. Short, kind, simple, professional. The kind of message that told her everything. He wasn't angry. He wasn't going to make this a problem. Relief and embarrassment crashed together inside her like a wave. Still, the rest of the weekend passed in a haze. Emma couldn't stop replaying the mistake in her mind. Even as she tried to distract herself with chores, yoga, or Netflix marathons, every quiet moment brought the same flash of turquoise, and that single mortifying word. Beach ready. She considered calling in sick Monday, then decided that would only make her look guiltier. By Sunday night, she had decided to face it head on. The next morning, Emma woke up before dawn. She dressed carefully, conservative blouse, tailored blazer, minimal makeup. Her reflection in the mirror looked calm, but her stomach was in knots. When she arrived at the Brightwave office 15 minutes early, the place was nearly empty. She made herself a cup of coffee, telling herself she'd get through the day one meeting at a time. Just then, a familiar voice broke her thoughts. "Good morning, Emma." Her grip on the cup tightened slightly as she turned. Daniel stood there, tall, composed, with that same calm expression he always had. His dark blue tie matched his sharp eyes, and the faintest smile played at the corner of his lips. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she managed, her voice polite but tight. "Daniel's fine when it's just us," he said easily, pouring himself some coffee. "How was your weekend?" Emma blinked. He's pretending it didn't happen, she realized with both relief and confusion. "It was good," she said cautiously. "Relaxing. Yours?" "Productive," he replied. "I reviewed the Johnson campaign material you worked on. Excellent job, by the way. I wanted to talk to you before the team meeting. I have a new project I'd like you to lead." Her heart skipped. "A new project? Was this real?" "Thank you, sir. I mean Daniel," she said softly. "I'd be honored. The Riverside Hotel Group," he continued. "It's a 6-figure rebrand deal. They specifically requested someone with fresh ideas, and I thought of you immediately. You'll lead coordination. I'll handle creative direction." He paused, glancing up with that steady, unreadable gaze. "There's a retreat at their Clearwater Beach property this weekend. 3 days. You'll attend, of course?" Emma froze for just a second. Clearwater Beach. The exact destination she had planned for her vacation with Sophie. And the same reason she'd bought that bikini. Life, it seemed, had a sense of humor. "Yes, I'll be there," she said with a nervous smile. "Perfect," Daniel said. "One more thing, Emma, about the text. It's forgotten. Don't let it trouble you." His tone was kind, firm, and final. It wasn't forgiveness. It was professionalism. Yet something in the warmth of his gaze made her chest tighten unexpectedly. She nodded. "Thank you," and that was that. Or at least it should have been. But as the morning went on, as they discussed strategies, taglines, and layouts, Emma couldn't help noticing small things. The way his voice softened when he spoke directly to her. The way his eyes lingered a moment longer when she smiled. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just her imagination, mixed with leftover nerves. Still, something felt different, like an invisible thread had been pulled between them. By the time she returned home that evening, exhausted but oddly thoughtful, Sophie was waiting on the couch. "Well," she demanded, "are you fired, promoted, or secretly married now?" Emma laughed, dropping her bag. "Still employed. And actually, promoted." Sophie's jaw dropped. "What? After the bikini disaster?" Emma smiled, shaking her head. "Apparently he doesn't hold grudges." "Well," Sophie grinned, "maybe that mistake wasn't such a mistake after all." But Emma didn't answer. Her mind drifted back to Daniel's calm smile, the steadiness in his eyes, the way his voice had softened when he said it's forgotten. She didn't know it yet, but that one accidental message, that single photo sent to the wrong number, was about to change not just her career, but her entire life. The beach retreat. The morning sun glittered over Clearwater Beach like molten gold spilled across the horizon, the waves dancing to a rhythm only the sea knew. Emma stepped out of the taxi in front of the Riverside Hotel, her heart thudding with both nerves and wonder. The resort stood like a glass palace, tall and gleaming, with palm trees swaying gently against a backdrop of ocean and sky. She adjusted the strap of her laptop bag, reminding herself that this wasn't a vacation. It was work, and she had to make the best impression possible. The air smelled of salt and flowers, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to breathe in the beauty of it all. Inside, the lobby was alive with soft music and elegant conversation. Marble floors reflected the glow of chandeliers, and guests in linen and smiles passed by with a kind of effortless grace that made her feel slightly out of place. Then she saw him, Daniel Reed, standing near the reception desk, his sleeves rolled just enough to reveal the strong lines of his forearms as he spoke to the hotel manager. His composure was the same as always, steady, focused, unshaken. But when his eyes caught hers, his expression softened just enough to let her exhale. "Good morning, Emma," he said as she approached. "Welcome to paradise, or at least the professional version of it." She smiled nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's beautiful. Thank you for including me on this project." "You earned it," he replied, offering a polite nod before handing her the itinerary. "Check-in is under your name. Your room's on the executive floor, just 2 doors down from mine. The welcome reception starts at 7. Try to get some rest before then. We'll have a long few days ahead." She thanked him and followed the concierge to her room, her mind buzzing with both excitement and unease. The suite was stunning. Ocean view, balcony, soft blue tones, and the sound of waves brushing the shore just beyond the glass doors. She stood there for a while, watching sunlight bounce off the water, feeling a strange calm settle over her. The very place she had dreamed of visiting with Sophie had now become the stage for one of the biggest opportunities of her career. And somewhere beneath that professional thrill was the quiet awareness that she was sharing this space, this experience, with the man who had unknowingly seen her at her most unguarded. The evening came with a gentle ocean breeze and the scent of salt and hibiscus flowers in the air. Emma wore a flowing white dress, modest yet elegant, with her hair loosely tied back. The terrace glowed under soft golden lights as the guests mingled, glasses of sparkling juice and cocktails in their hands, the hum of polite laughter weaving through the music. Daniel was already there, dressed in a light gray suit without a tie, his usual formal air softened by the coastal atmosphere. When he saw her approaching, he gave a small smile that reached his eyes. Not professional, not distant, just quietly genuine. "Emma," he said, moving aside as she joined the circle of executives. "This is Mr. Carson, the head of the Riverside chain, and his marketing director, Ms. Lane. They've heard a lot about your work on the Johnson campaign." The conversation flowed easily, and Emma found her confidence growing with every question and compliment. She spoke about branding, storytelling, and customer experience with passion, and Daniel listened beside her, occasionally nodding, occasionally adding something that highlighted her skill even further. It struck her how subtly he supported her, guiding, not overshadowing, allowing her to shine. Later, as the evening softened into moonlight, most of the guests drifted away toward the lounge, leaving only a few small groups still talking on the terrace. Emma stood by the railing, gazing at the ocean, her heels dangling from one hand. The sound of waves reminded her of home, of all the small choices that had led her here, and of one text message that had almost destroyed her composure. She smiled faintly at the irony. "You did well tonight." Daniel's voice came softly behind her. She turned, surprised to see him holding 2 glasses of fruit punch. "You made quite an impression on the clients." She accepted the drink with a quiet thank you. "I was terrified," she admitted after a pause. "I thought I'd say something foolish or stumble over a number." Daniel chuckled, leaning casually against the railing beside her. "You didn't. You were poised, clear, and honest." People remember that more than perfect numbers. He took a sip of his drink before glancing at her with a small, thoughtful smile. You remind me of myself when I first started out, trying too hard to be perfect, afraid one misstep would ruin everything. Emma looked at him curiously. You, afraid of mistakes? Of course, he said lightly. But the truth is, mistakes are how we grow. Sometimes the wrong step leads to the right path. His tone carried a meaning she couldn't quite define, as if he wasn't just talking about work. Their eyes met, and for a moment silence hung between them. Not awkward, but aware, filled with something new and fragile. Then Daniel's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. He looked down, nodded briefly, and said, "I'll see you in the morning, Emma. Big day ahead. Get some rest." She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing through the glass doors into the lobby, and wondered if he had meant anything by those words. The next morning began early. The conference room overlooked the beach, sunlight painting the walls with shifting waves of gold. Charts, sketches, and brand boards covered the tables. Emma led the presentation, her nerves replaced by focus. Daniel sat across from her, listening with the kind of attentiveness that felt like quiet trust. When she spoke about reimagining the Riverside brand, from luxury for the elite to serenity for everyone, she saw nods of approval all around the table. After hours of strategy discussions, they broke for lunch and the client suggested moving to the beachfront cafe. Emma stepped barefoot onto the warm sand for the first time, the ocean breeze tangling her hair, and a laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Daniel noticed, smiling slightly. "You like it here?" "I love it," she admitted, her tone soft. "It feels alive, free. It's strange, and this trip started because of such a ridiculous mistake, and yet, I'm grateful. I feel like I'm seeing life differently." Daniel's expression shifted, thoughtful and kind. "That's the thing about life, Emma. It doesn't always go according to plan. But sometimes the detours bring us where we're meant to be." They spent the afternoon reviewing concepts, but between the charts and deadlines there were moments, fleeting, wordless, why when their eyes met and neither spoke. She began to see a side of him no one at the office did, the man behind the director title. He laughed quietly when she teased him about his coffee addiction. He listened when she spoke of her dreams. And when a sudden gust of wind blew her presentation pages into the air, he bent down to gather them with her, their hands brushing in the sand. The contact was brief, but it sent a ripple through her heart she couldn't explain. That evening after dinner, the hotel hosted a bonfire on the beach for all conference guests. Soft music played in the background and the flames flickered against the night sky. Emma sat on a low chair, her toes buried in the sand, watching sparks rise into the dark. Daniel joined her quietly, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "For the record," he said, handing her one, "you've done an incredible job this weekend. The clients are more than impressed. You've just earned Brightwave one of its most important partnerships." Emma's chest filled with quiet pride. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." He looked at her for a long moment, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "You've come a long way, Emma. I hope you know that." The night air hummed softly between them. She wanted to say something, anything, but words felt fragile, too small for the storm of feelings building quietly inside her. The waves whispered against the shore, the sky stretched endless and full of stars, and she realized that somewhere between fear and admiration, her heart had begun to shift. But as she glanced at Daniel, she saw a flicker of distance behind his calm. He was her boss, her mentor, and she knew that whatever this growing warmth was, it was something neither of them could afford to acknowledge. She smiled instead, gentle and composed. "I'll try to keep making Brightwave proud." He nodded, returning her smile with one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You already do." Later that night, back in her room, Emma stood on the balcony, looking out over the moonlit water. The breeze brushed against her skin, cool and gentle. She thought about the strange chain of events that had brought her here. One small mistake that had led to unexpected understanding. One text that had broken all the walls she thought existed between her and her boss. In the quiet glow of the night, Emma realized something she hadn't before. Sometimes life doesn't need grand beginnings. Sometimes it starts with the simplest of errors, and if your heart is open enough, even a moment of embarrassment can lead you toward grace, growth, and maybe, just maybe, something that changes everything. And though she didn't know what the future held, She felt it in her heart. This was only the beginning. The unspoken connection. The return from Clearwater Beach was quiet, almost too quiet, as if both Emma and Daniel were lost in the aftertaste of days that had changed something subtle between them. The flight home carried the usual chatter of passengers and the hum of the engines, yet between them hung a delicate silence made not of discomfort, but of awareness. They both knew that something had shifted, not outwardly, not in any visible way, but somewhere beneath the layers of professionalism and restraint that defined their working lives. For Emma, those 3 days had been a revelation. She had seen Daniel beyond the glass walls of the office, the way he smiled when the wind caught his hair, the way he listened with quiet depth, the way he treated everyone, from executives to hotel staff, with the same calm respect. She had always admired him as a mentor, but now she found herself thinking of him as something more. A man who led not just with authority, but with heart. And that realization frightened her more than any professional challenge she had ever faced. When the plane landed and the city skyline came into view, Emma felt a strange sadness. Back to reality. Back to the same office walls, the same desks, the same unspoken distance that would once again separate them. Daniel, always composed, thanked the team for their hard work, offering everyone a rare smile before heading toward the exit. Emma followed, her suitcase rolling softly behind her, her heart full of unspoken words she could never allow herself to say. "You did exceptionally well," Daniel told her as they reached the terminal doors. "The clients were impressed. They've already emailed me about extending the campaign into a long-term partnership." She smiled, trying to sound normal. "That's wonderful. I'm glad they liked our ideas." He paused then, looking at her for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. "You've grown a lot, Emma. Keep it up." And with that, he gave a polite nod and disappeared into the crowd. The following days at Brightwave felt different. Emma noticed how people began to treat her with new respect, how her input in meetings suddenly carried more weight, how Daniel occasionally sought her opinion before finalizing creative pitches. Yet with that came a new kind of tension, one that only she felt. Every time he passed by her desk, every time his voice cut through the air in that calm, authoritative tone, she felt her pulse quicken just slightly. She tried to bury herself in work, telling herself it was just admiration, nothing more, nothing less. Still, there were moments that refused to stay ordinary. The brief meeting of eyes during a brainstorming session, the quiet good work he'd murmur as he passed her cubicle, the soft way he'd hold the door for her when they left the conference room together. Tiny, simple gestures that meant everything when you were trying to convince yourself they didn't. Sophie, of course, noticed something had changed long before Emma admitted it. "You've been humming around the apartment again," she teased one evening, sprawled on the couch with a bowl of popcorn. "And don't deny it. That's your 'I have feelings but I'm in denial' hum." Emma rolled her eyes, laughing softly. "It's nothing like that. He's just been kinder, I guess. More encouraging." Sophie arched an eyebrow. "Uh-huh. And you just happen to glow every time you mention his name?" Emma sighed, dropping onto the couch beside her. "It's complicated, Soph. He's my boss. Whatever this is, or isn't, it can't be anything. I can't risk my career. Not after how hard I've worked." Sophie leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe. But sometimes the heart doesn't care about the rules the world sets. Just be careful, okay? Protect your heart and your dream, too." Emma smiled faintly. "I will." Weeks passed, and Brightwave's new campaign flourished under Emma's leadership. She poured herself into the work, and Daniel noticed. One afternoon, he stopped by her desk holding a file. "The Riverside follow-up presentation is tomorrow," he said. "I want you to lead it alone this time. You've earned their trust." Her heart skipped. "Me? Alone?" "You're ready," he said simply. And when he said it, she believed it. The next day, standing before a conference room filled with executives, Emma delivered her presentation with confidence she had never felt before. She spoke with passion, clarity, and conviction. And when the applause came at the end, she saw Daniel watching her from the doorway, his expression calm but proud. That look, steady and approving, was more rewarding than any award could ever be. After the meeting, he approached her quietly. "You were brilliant," he said. "I couldn't have done it better myself." She smiled, her voice soft. "I learned from the best." For a brief second, their eyes met again. The kind of moment that stretched time, where silence spoke louder than any words could. That evening, as the office emptied, Emma stayed behind to finalize the reports. The lights were dim, the hum of computers low, the city outside glowing through the glass walls. Daniel's office door was still open, light spilling from within. She hesitated for a long moment before knocking softly. "Come in," he said, looking up from his laptop. "I just wanted to drop off the final numbers from the Riverside presentation," she said, placing the folder on his desk. He nodded, setting the papers aside. "Thank you. You didn't have to stay late for that." "I wanted to," she admitted, her voice quieter now. "It felt important to finish it right." He leaned back slightly, studying her for a moment. "You take pride in everything you do." "That's rare, Emma. Don't lose that." The air between them shifted. The office was silent except for the faint sound of rain beginning to fall against the windows. Emma glanced toward it, the reflections of the city lights shimmering like falling stars. "Do you ever wonder," she said softly, "if everything we call a mistake is actually part of something we're meant to learn?" Daniel's eyes met hers, and for once she saw something raw beneath his calm, something unspoken. "I used to think mistakes were failures," he said after a pause. "But I've learned they're often messages, reminders to slow down, to look closer, to feel again." His voice dropped slightly, almost a whisper. "Sometimes even an accident can change the way you see someone." Her heart pounded, but before she could respond, the moment passed. He stood, closing his laptop. "You should head home, Emma. It's getting late." She nodded, clutching her bag, but as she turned to leave, he added quietly, "I'm proud of you. I hope you know that." The words lingered with her all the way home, through the soft rhythm of the rain, through the hum of the train, through the quiet of her apartment where Sophie was already asleep. She stood by the window, watching droplets race down the glass, and whispered to herself, "Maybe some mistakes are blessings in disguise." Days melted into weeks, and the bond between them grew stronger, not loud, not obvious, but steady and profound. There were moments of laughter over coffee, long hours spent refining campaigns side by side, and quiet glances that said what words couldn't. Yet neither of them crossed the invisible line between admiration and confession. For Daniel, it was a matter of principle. He valued her talent, respected her independence, and refused to blur the boundaries that defined them. For Emma, it was fear of losing the respect she had earned, fear of misunderstanding something that had become precious. But destiny has a way of forcing hearts to speak when silence grows too heavy. One late Friday evening, the agency received an emergency call from the Riverside Hotel, a crisis in branding due to a public relations mishap. Daniel and Emma were tasked with handling it overnight. They worked side by side for hours, surrounded by papers, half-drunk coffee, and the glow of computer screens. Exhaustion made their defenses drop, and laughter slipped through the cracks of stress. When the final draft was done and the last file sent, the clock read 2 a.m. Emma leaned back in her chair, stretching, her eyes half closed. "I can't feel my fingers anymore," she murmured. Daniel chuckled softly. "You've saved the company tonight. Maybe even the client's reputation." "We make a good team," she said sleepily. "The best," he replied quietly. For a long moment, neither moved. The city lights shimmered through the office windows, casting a soft glow that blurred the line between work and something more personal. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low, thoughtful. "You know, Emma, I never told you this, but when you sent that message, the photo, I thought it would ruin everything. Not because of what it was, but because I realized something that day." She turned toward him, her breath caught. "What did you realize?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly, almost wistfully. "That sometimes we see people every day and never truly notice them until life forces us to look. That mistake made me see you differently, not just as an employee, but as someone strong, human, full of light. And I respected you more because you owned that mistake with grace." Emma's eyes softened. "I thought it would destroy my career. I spent days terrified to face you. And yet you did," he said quietly. "That's courage." The silence that followed was deep and meaningful, carrying every unsaid emotion between them. The clock ticked softly. Outside, the city kept breathing, unaware that inside one quiet office, two hearts were learning to understand what destiny meant by sending that message to the wrong number. As Emma gathered her things to leave, Daniel stopped her at the door. "Get some rest," he said gently. "And Emma?" She turned. "Yes? Don't let fear stop you from living. You've already proven that mistakes don't define you. What you do after them does." That night, Emma walked home under the streetlights, her heart full of thoughts she could barely name. The rain had stopped, but the world still smelled new, washed clean. She looked up at the sky, smiled softly, and whispered, "Thank you, life, for even the wrong turns." What she didn't know was that this moment, this calm between them, was only the beginning of a turning point that would soon test everything they believed about love, respect, and destiny. The distance between hearts, weeks turned into months, and Brightwave marketing entered one of the busiest seasons in its history. Projects multiplied, deadlines grew tighter, and Emma found herself in the center of it all. Trusted, capable, indispensable. Her office light often burned long after others had gone home, and more than once Daniel would appear at her door with 2 cups of coffee, offering one wordlessly before joining her at the table to work through campaign drafts. Those late-night sessions became their quiet routine. Sometimes they discussed strategy, sometimes they talked about dreams, about childhood memories, about what success really meant when the world never seemed to slow down. In those moments, the distance between them faded, not in any romantic declaration, but in the gentle familiarity that builds when 2 souls learn to understand each other beyond words. Yet beneath that calm connection, something deeper stirred, fragile and dangerous, like a tide that waited patiently to rise. It was during one of those long nights that everything began to change. The agency had just won a major national contract, and Daniel had been invited to a leadership summit in New York to represent Brightwave. Before leaving, he asked Emma to temporarily take charge of creative operations. "You're ready," he said with quiet confidence. "Handle it like it's your own company." His words filled her with both pride and fear. For 3 years she had worked under his direction, and now, for the first time, she was being trusted to steer the ship alone. She accepted the challenge wholeheartedly. The week he was away, she led with strength and compassion, ensuring every project ran smoothly. Her team admired her calm authority, and when Daniel returned, even he seemed surprised by how effortlessly she had managed everything. "I knew you could do it," he said, smiling as he walked into her office one evening. "You didn't just maintain the standard, you elevated it." That compliment should have been enough, but the way he looked at her made her chest tighten. There was something unguarded in his eyes, something that broke through his professional armor. She looked away quickly, her voice barely steady. "I just followed your example." But both of them knew that what connected them now went beyond work. It was something quiet and real, the kind of bond that didn't need words but existed in every shared glance, every unspoken thought, every moment when silence felt like understanding. It might have remained that way, balanced on the fine line between affection and restraint, if not for the company's annual charity gala. The event was held in a grand hotel ballroom, lit by crystal chandeliers and music that shimmered through the air. Emma had spent weeks planning every detail. When she arrived that night in a simple emerald dress, she didn't expect to draw anyone's attention, least of all Daniel's. But the moment she stepped into the room, his gaze found her. He was speaking with a group of investors when he caught sight of her across the hall, and for a heartbeat the noise around him seemed to vanish. She looked radiant, poised, confident, graceful, and he realized that somewhere along the way, admiration had turned into something far more personal. Emma, meanwhile, tried to keep her composure. She moved through the crowd, greeting clients and colleagues, her laughter soft and polite. But she felt his eyes on her more than once. Later that evening, as the guests began to drift toward the dance floor, Daniel approached. "You did a wonderful job tonight," he said, offering a faint smile. "The event is flawless." "Thank you," she replied, her heart racing at the nearness of him. "It means a lot." "You should enjoy it too," he said, glancing toward the floor where music played softly. "Would you like to dance?" The question hung in the air, unexpected and intimate. She hesitated only a second before nodding. The moment their hands touched, a current passed between them, quiet, undeniable. They moved slowly, gracefully, as if the world had paused to give them space to breathe. The light shimmered against the golden edges of the room, and for the first time, neither of them hid behind titles or fears. Daniel looked at her with a gentleness that said more than any confession could. Emma, caught between disbelief and wonder, realized she was no longer afraid of her feelings. But reality returned like a sudden gust of wind. A few guests noticed them, whispering softly, and Emma's chest tightened with the reminder of what this could mean. Rumors, misunderstanding, damage to their reputations. She pulled back slightly, her voice low. "We should stop. People might talk." Daniel released her hand at once, his expression careful again. "You're right," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," she replied quickly. "It's just, I don't want to be seen as someone who climbed her way up for the wrong reasons." His eyes softened with understanding. "You're not. Anyone who knows you would never think that." But she knew the world didn't always see truth the way hearts did. The next day, whispers began to circulate through the office. Nothing cruel, just subtle comments. A lingering look from a colleague, a passing joke that carried a sting. Emma tried to ignore it, but inside it tore at her confidence. She had worked so hard to build her career on integrity, and now one evening, one dance had turned that hard-earned respect into speculation. Daniel noticed her change immediately. She spoke less, smiled less, avoided his gaze in meetings. Finally, one evening after everyone had left, he found her in the conference room, staring out at the rain. "You've been distant," he said gently. "Is it because of what people are saying?" She didn't answer at first, then whispered, "I just don't want anyone to think I'm here because of you." He took a step closer. "You're here because of your talent, your dedication, your strength. You've earned every bit of this. Don't let gossip steal your peace." "It's not that simple," she said softly. "People believe what they want to believe." Daniel's expression darkened slightly, a quiet frustration flashing behind his calm. "Then let them talk. The truth doesn't need to defend itself." But Emma shook her head. "Maybe for you. You're established, respected. But I'm still building my place here. I can't afford a shadow hanging over my name." For a long moment they stood there, the sound of rain filling the silence. Then Daniel said almost reluctantly, "If you think stepping away from my projects will make things easier, I'll understand." The words hit her like a stone, heavy and cold. "You're reassigning me?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm giving you the choice. I don't want you to feel trapped between your reputation and your work." Emma looked at him, her heart torn. Everything inside her wanted to stay, not just for the work, but because this was where she felt seen, valued, alive. Yet she also knew she couldn't move forward while constantly fighting whispers. "Maybe it's better if I take a break," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Just for a while." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "If that's what you need, I'll support it." The next week, Emma requested a short leave of absence under the pretense of personal reasons. She packed her desk quietly, avoiding long goodbyes. Daniel didn't try to stop her, though every glance they exchanged felt like a conversation left unfinished. On her last day, as she walked out of the building, he was waiting by the elevator. "Emma," he said softly, "I never wanted this." "I know," she whispered, "but maybe it's for the best. Sometimes distance helps us see things clearly." He looked at her for a long time, then simply said, "Take care of yourself." She smiled faintly. "You too, Daniel." The elevator doors closed, and she felt her heart close with them. For the first time in years, she found herself without routine. The days stretched quietly, filled with long walks, coffee at small cafes, and time spent thinking about what truly mattered. She realized how much of her life had been defined by fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, fear of losing what she had worked so hard for. And yet, that one mistaken message months ago had brought her the most meaningful experiences of her life. She began journaling again, something she hadn't done since college, writing about courage, kindness, and the power of starting over. Each page was a reminder that growth often comes through discomfort. Meanwhile, back at Brightwave, Daniel felt her absence like an echo. The office ran smoothly, but the energy had changed. He missed her insight, her laughter, the way she could turn chaos into order with calm confidence. Late at night, when he stayed behind to finish reports, he would catch himself glancing at the empty desk near the glass wall where she used to sit. He realized then that what he admired most about her wasn't her work. It was her integrity, the way she faced every challenge with grace, even when life seemed unfair. One evening, unable to ignore the silence any longer, Daniel found himself scrolling through his phone. He opened a message window, stared at it for a long time, then typed slowly. "You once said mistakes teach us what we need to learn. I think you were right. I've learned that letting go of something good out of fear might be the biggest mistake of all." He stared at the words for several minutes, then deleted them. Some feelings, he decided, weren't meant for screens. Weeks later, fate intervened once more. The company landed a massive global campaign, and the board specifically requested Emma's leadership after her success with Riverside. Daniel reached out personally, asking her to return, not as an assistant but as creative lead. The message he sent was simple. The team isn't the same without you. Come back when you're ready. Not because you have to, but because you belong here. Emma read it 3 times, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't name. It wasn't romance, not yet, not in the usual sense. It was something purer, a bond of respect and destiny, the kind that life rarely grants twice. As she packed her bag for her return, the sun broke through the clouds outside her window, lighting her face with warmth. She whispered softly to herself. Sometimes walking away isn't the end. It's just the space life gives you to rediscover who you are. And somewhere across the city, Daniel stood by his office window, watching the rain clear from the glass. For the first time in a long while, he smiled, because he knew that the story that had begun with a single mistaken message was far from over. The full circle of fate. The morning of her return felt unreal. The city was just waking up, painted in soft hues of dawn, and Emma stood before the glass doors of Brightwave Marketing with her heart drumming like the very first day she had joined years ago. The difference now was that she was no longer the uncertain girl trying to prove herself. She was a woman who had walked through mistakes, faced judgment, rebuilt her strength, and rediscovered her worth. The receptionist smiled warmly as she entered, her familiar ID card once again hanging from her neck. A wave of nostalgia washed over her, the scent of coffee, the faint hum of printers, the echo of creative chatter filling the air. It all felt like coming home. She made her way toward her old office, now labeled Creative Lead, and paused for a moment before stepping inside. It was larger than her previous desk, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. On the table sat a single vase of white lilies, her favorite flowers, and a note in neat handwriting that simply said, "Welcome back, Emma. The team is ready for your brilliance." Signed only with a single initial, D. Her chest tightened with warmth. She ran her fingers lightly over the paper, smiling. It wasn't just the words. It was the thought behind them, quiet, sincere, and free of expectation. The rest of the day passed in a blur of reunions and congratulations. Colleagues who once whispered behind her back now greeted her with genuine respect. They had seen how her ideas had shaped the company's success even in her absence, and now she stood before them not as Daniel's assistant or subordinate, but as a leader in her own right. The Riverside clients called to personally welcome her back onto the new campaign. For the first time in her career, Emma felt a complete sense of belonging, earned, not given. Later that evening, when the office had emptied and the lights dimmed to a soft golden glow, Emma remained at her desk finalizing a creative pitch. The city sparkled beyond the glass like a field of stars. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. She looked up, and there he was, Daniel, standing at the threshold, hands in his pockets, that familiar calm on his face, but a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Still working late," he said with a quiet smile. "Some habits never change." She returned the smile. "I could say the same about you." He stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It was full of everything they had left unsaid. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said finally, his voice low and sincere. "I hoped you would, but I didn't want to ask too much of you." "You didn't have to," she replied softly. "Sometimes life leads you exactly where you're meant to be, even if you take the long way around." He nodded, eyes fixed on her with quiet admiration. "You've done incredible things, Emma. Everyone sees it. You've built this place into something better than I could have done alone." She shook her head gently. "You gave me the chance. That's what good leaders do." He hesitated, then said in a tone that carried both weight and humility, Emma, there's something I never told you. Something I should have said long ago. When that photo arrived on my phone months ago, my first instinct was shock. But right after that came something else. Gratitude. Not for the mistake itself, but for the reminder it gave me. It made me realize how much humanity I had lost behind all the rules and structure I built around myself. You brought color back into this place, into my life, without ever meaning to. Emma's heart ached at the honesty in his words. I never meant for any of this to happen, she said quietly. I just wanted to do good work, to make you proud. He smiled faintly. And you did. But you also reminded me that perfection isn't everything, that people matter more than projects, that kindness doesn't make you weak and it makes you unforgettable. The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Daniel took a step closer, his gaze steady but gentle. When you left, I told myself it was for the best. But the truth is, this office and this entire company felt empty without you. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You have this way of turning chaos into calm, doubt into faith, and I miss that. Emma felt her breath hitch, her eyes shimmering in the low light. I missed it too, she admitted, her voice trembling just slightly. But I needed the time away. I needed to remember who I was, not just as someone's employee, but as myself. He nodded. And you did? You came back stronger than ever. They stood there for a long moment. Two people bound by something more profound than words, not a dramatic romance, but a deep unspoken connection built on trust, growth, and shared understanding. Then Daniel said softly, I don't want to lose you again, in any sense. I know we've both been careful, maybe too careful, but life's too short to let fear decide for us. Emma looked at him, her heartbeat steady but full of emotion. What are you saying, Daniel? I'm saying, he replied, his voice quiet but firm, that whatever happens next, inside or outside these walls, I want to face it honestly. You don't owe me anything, and I'll never let it affect our work. But if there's even a chance that what we've both felt isn't just coincidence, then I'd rather take that chance than spend another day pretending it doesn't exist. Her eyes softened, and for the first time she let her guard fall completely. It's not coincidence, she whispered. But it's not something we need to rush either. Let it be what it's meant to be, naturally, honestly, in its own time. Daniel smiled then, a real, unguarded smile that reached his eyes, the kind she had only seen once before, on that quiet night by the bonfire in Clearwater. Then let's do that, he said simply. Let's stop trying to control the story and just live it. From that day forward, everything changed. Not dramatically, not publicly, but quietly and beautifully. Their working relationship remained professional, yet the warmth between them was unmistakable. They challenged each other creatively, supported each other during crises, and built Brightwave into one of the most respected agencies in the country. The team thrived under their combined leadership, inspired by the harmony they brought into the workplace. In time, the old rumors faded, replaced by admiration for the pair who led not through power but through empathy. Months later, during another company retreat, this time in the same resort where their story had quietly begun, Emma stood on the terrace watching the sunset. The sky was painted with shades of gold and rose, the waves whispering below like old friends. She felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Daniel joined her silently, standing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. You know, he said softly, I sometimes think about that first message you sent. She laughed, a sound filled with warmth and nostalgia. Don't remind me. I nearly quit my job that day. He smiled, and yet here we are. That one mistake changed both our lives. It did, she agreed, gazing at the horizon, but not because of the picture, because of what came after. Because we chose to handle it with understanding instead of judgment. Maybe that's the real lesson life was trying to teach us. He nodded slowly. That kindness and grace can turn even the most embarrassing moments into blessings. She smiled at him, eyes glinting in the fading light. Exactly. Sometimes the message that goes to the wrong person ends up being sent to the right soul. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood there in comfortable silence. 2 people whose paths had crossed through accident but intertwined through choice. They didn't need grand confessions or promises. What they shared was quieter, deeper, built on trust, respect, and the understanding that love, in its truest form, often begins where fear ends. When they returned to the office the following week, a framed photo had appeared in the lobby, a candid shot of the entire Brightwave team smiling on the beach. The caption beneath it reading, "Mistakes are just detours on the road to something greater." Emma didn't know who had put it there, but she suspected Daniel. And every time she passed by it, she smiled, reminded that even the wrong turn can lead to the right destination. Years later, when Brightwave had grown into an international brand, people still spoke of the story behind its rise. How one young woman's mistake and one leader's grace had changed everything. And Emma, now a celebrated name in the industry, would always smile softly when asked about her journey. She would simply say, "It all began with a message I never meant to send, and a lesson I was meant to learn." She never revealed the details because some stories are not meant to be told in full. Some are meant to be lived, cherished, remembered as the quiet miracles that remind us how life's greatest gifts often arrive disguised as accidents. And so, as the lights of the city glowed below her office window one last time that night, Emma whispered to herself, "Sometimes destiny doesn't knock. It texts the wrong number,